Papermaking is one of the oldest crafts in the world. Making parchment from animal skin dates back to 2500 BC. And this is the last place in the US that still makes it using traditional techniques, like scraping off every piece of hair from goat hides. In Egypt, villagers invented papyrus paper at least 5,000 years ago. These craftsmen are among the last in the world to still make it. We visited 5 countries to see how artisans in different cultures are preserving the craft and making sure it is still standing.
This is one of the last places in the world that makes papyrus paper. People in this small Egyptian village reinvented the ancient process in the 1970s, and the industry thrived selling papyrus art to tourists. But today, there's little demand for the paper, and the plant is nearly extinct in Egypt. Those that remain are determined to carry on this piece of Egypt's history. We visited El Karamus to see how the ancient craft is still standing. Atef Mohammed Shahaita spends about 2 hours harvesting papyrus by hand from the single acre he owns. It takes a year for a papyrus seedling to grow to this size. After it's cut down, it grows back in 1 or 2 months. At one point, the village's land was filled with the plant. But today, there are only 10 acres left. Atef carries the plant about a mile to his workshop, where he employs 7 people. They chop the stalks based on the size they want the paper. Then, workers spend the entire day cutting the papyrus into thin strips, using a fishing line. This method is more efficient than the ancient process.
كان عشان يشرخوا بيشرخوا بالسكينة، احنا عندنا فتلة خيط بلاستيك.
But it's still exhausting.
مسكة الخيط كده ومسكة العود يعني مش سهلة، مش أي حد يعرف يعملها.
The strips soak in hot water mixed with potassium hydrate for a couple days. The chemicals speed up the fermentation process.
بنشرخ بيها. عندنا التخمير كان زمان هم بخمروا بيبطي أسبوع و2، احنا بنقعد بنخمر يوم و2.
Then they rinse the strips with water and chlorine to lighten the color.
اللون الورقة كانت غامقة عندهم، احنا عندنا صنعنا اللون بالكرول. عندنا كرول بيدينا اللون الفاتح والغامق. بنتحكم فيه يعني.
Workers lay out the wet papyrus strip by strip. Each sheet of paper has 2 layers, one vertical and one horizontal, to strengthen it. Then, the stack goes into the compressor to dry.
كان زمان ايام الفراعنه كان لما بيجوا يكبسوا الورق بقى يجيبوا حجاره ويكبسوها، احنا عندنا مكابس.
After that, the sheets are sandwiched between pieces of cardboard to soak up any leftover moisture.
100% كده الورقه نشفت اهي. كده خلصت على الغيار، كده تمام. نحطه في كيس ونعد الورق لايه، مثلا واحد عايز مثلا 500 ألف ورقه بنديها له.
Atef sells the paper to artists across the village, including Saeed Tarahan. He started out farming the plant, and today he works as an artist.
فتعالى واخد لك شوف شتله واخد لك صغيره واخد لك مزروعه شفتها واخد لك بدات تكبر والموضوع بدا يعني ايه نكبر معاه. اكبر فتره من عمري وانا بمارس بقت جزء مني.
But since the COVID-19 pandemic put a halt on tourism, he struggled to find a market. He had to close down his shop and lay off his workers just a couple weeks ago. Now he works out of his home.
مفروض واخد بالك ده شكل أنوبس موجود على خزنة توت عنخ آمون، ادي اسمه موجود، وأنوبس واخد بالك على خزنة، ده مقطع منه يعني. المفروض ان صندوق المجوهرات بتاعه وده واخد بالك. هنبدأ واخد بالك نملى مساحات ونعمل شكله اللي موجود في الأصل يعني.
All of Saeed's paintings include ancient Egyptian motifs to pay homage to papyrus's origin.
كان ليها عند الفراعنه واخد بالك تاريخ وليها قيمه احنا حاسين بيه، وعشان كده واخد بالك يعني لان دي قصه وتاريخ فاحنا محتفظين واخد بالك بالكلام ده وعارفين قيمته.
Egyptians invented papyrus paper at least 5,000 years ago, replacing clay tablets and revolutionizing the written word. They used it for things like marriage contracts and shopping lists. They also turned the plant into a weaving material for sandals and baskets. Cheaper paper made from wood pulp or plant fibers eventually replaced papyrus paper, and the plant became nearly extinct in Egypt by the early 1800s, until an art professor and an engineer brought back seeds from other African countries in the 1970s. They set up plantations and workshops in El Karamus. And papyrus became the center of the local economy.
الورق البردي لما نزل قرموس احنا اشتغلناه فيه، كان احنا بنزرع اراضينا قمح، الجنيه هو افضل من زرع القمح يعني بيكسب.
Almost everyone in the village was involved with processing raw materials or making artwork to sell to tourists. Saeed got into papyrus because his cousin was the art professor who helped revive it. He remembers it as a turning point for the village.
فدي واخد بالك اهي زراعه جديده لكن اثرت فينا واخد بالك يعني اقتصاديا المردود والعائد الاقتصادي واخد بالك والثقافي والاجتماعي لا غيرتنا واخد بالك بالطبع. كان تغيير واخد بالك للاحسن.
But after the Arab Spring uprisings in 2011, tourism in Egypt crashed. The country saw a 63% drop in visitors over the following years through 2016. And the market for papyrus paper nearly vanished. A decade later, the industry had just started to recover when the pandemic hit. Saeed has gotten just one order in the past week. A painting like this normally sells to tourist shops for 50 Egyptian pounds, or $3. Bigger and more detailed pieces go for up to 500 Egyptian pounds, or $32. But with sales down, Saeed has had to work another job to keep his business afloat. And he says he'll do everything he can to save the art.
الناس اصبحت واخد بالك النهارده بقت حاجه اساسيه جدا في حياتنا. لا ما ينفعش. شعوري انا الشخصي واخد بالك في حاله ان انا يعني هحس واخد بالك ان انا افتقدت حاجه مهمه جدا جدا في حياتي.
Atef is also determined to keep Egypt's history alive.
فدي مش حكايه فلوس، ان هي ايام جدي وابويا ان هي موجودين واحنا تربينا عليها يعني. ازعل جامد ان انقرضت الورق البردي يعني.
And with Egypt's tourism industry expected to recover this year, Saeed is holding out hope for papyrus.
أنا توقعي واخد بالك إنه لهذه الحرفة الازدهار إن شاء الله بدليل حجم المتاحف اللي بتنشأ واخد بالك في مصر، وهي عموما السياحة في مصر تمرض ولا تموت.
Papermaking has been the heart of this Indian town's economy for at least 5 centuries. And a lot of the work is done by hand, one sheet at a time. This factory can make 10,000 sheets in just a day. But in a modern world full of automated paper mills, how is a 500-year-old industry still standing? The work at Kalpana Handmade Papers in Sanganer starts with waste. The workshop recycles scraps from garment factories that would otherwise be thrown away. Nimi Chand Saini is the owner and oversees every step of the process.
इसमें जो दिख रहा है आपको ये छलनी है, इसमें कोई मिट्टी के कण हो या इसमें कोई कचरा हो तो कचरा हम निकाल रहे हैं इससे.
Bigger pieces go through this shredding machine. Within seconds, a pile of pulverized fabric comes out the other end. Workers dump over 200 pounds of shredded fabric and paper into this tank. One batch takes 1,500 liters of water. The mixing used to be done entirely by hand, which took triple the amount of time as it does today. Now, the machine can churn out pulp in under 2 hours. Then, it's time for the most crucial step, turning the pulp into paper. This skill requires years of training.
इसी का जो सबसे मेन ये चीज़ सीखे हुए कारीगर होते हैं उनको सिखाया जाता है. सिखाने के बाद में ही कर पाते हैं ये. नहीं ये जो है बिल्कुल इनको हर आदमी के लिए मुश्किल है.
It takes 2 people to spread the pulp evenly onto the sieve. The amount varies depending on how thick the paper will be.
सबसे बड़ा मुश्किल काम यही है इसको जो बिल्कुल अपने स्ट्रेट रखना। ये पर सीट वेट के हिसाब से होती है, तो इस पल्प के नाप से ये डाल रहे हैं अकॉर्डिंग उसके कि जितनी थिकनेस हमको चाहिए।
A piece of cloth goes on top of the pulp so that the sheets don't stick together. For specialty paper, workers add extra decorations, like these rose petals. They do this 1,000 times until the batch is complete. Then, the stack goes into the hydraulic press.
पहले सर इस पे क्या होता था कि हम इसके ऊपर कुछ लकड़ी का फंटा लगा करके इस पे कुछ वेट रख करके और उस फिर पानी निकालने के बाद में फिर क्या होता था कि इसको हम दीवारों को चिपका के पेपर को।
Now they use heavy machinery to press the stack and send it to the upper level where there's sunlight. They remove each piece of cloth one by one, so it can be reused in another batch.
ये फट करके खराब नहीं हो जाएगा, तब तक हम इसको यूज करते रहेंगे।
The sheets hang out to dry for 2 days. Then a machine called a calendar smooths out each piece.
ये चद्दर है लोहे की, इसके बीच में ये दोनों रोल के बीच में जाएगा मशीन में।
Workers say that the paper's texture changes drastically after this process. Finally, with the help of a giant paper cutter, the worker slices stacks of paper down to size. The scraps will make their way back into the process from the beginning. Paper-making communities called Kagsis came to India around the 16th century and eventually settled in the town of Sanganer. A nearby river made it the perfect place for making paper. But when the British came to power in the 1800s, they started importing paper from mills abroad. The local workshops that made paper by hand couldn't compete, and many closed down. Mahatma Gandhi stepped in during the 1940s during his fight for Indian independence. He advocated for local handicrafts and is credited today with saving the handmade paper industry. Even though this factory's process has modernized with some machines, the sheet-by-sheet technique sets it apart from most mass-produced paper.
हाथ से जो बनाया वो पेपर है, उसमें एक अलग लुकिंग, अलग उसकी जो एक डिज़ाइन उस पेपर की एक अलग ही देखने को मिलती है, जो कि मिलमेड से अलग हट करके है।
They ship all over the world and use the paper to make hundreds of different products. About 40 employees design things like calendars, jewelry boxes,
तो आप इस बॉक्स को जैसे देखेंगे तो इसमें जो बाहर हम कार्डबोर्ड यूज़ कर रहे हैं वो दैट इज़ अ रिसाइकल्ड कार्डबोर्ड, और अंदर जो आप पेपर देख रहे हैं इट इज़ अ हैंडमेड पेपर।
and ornaments.
क्रिसमस ट्री पे जैसे डेकोरेट करें तो ये पूरा इको फ्रेंडली प्रोडक्ट है।
The workers here take pride in their craft.
सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि एक ये वेस्ट चीज़ से हम इस पेपर को तैयार कर रहे हैं। कोई बहुत हमको गर्व महसूस होता है कि हम अपने हाथ से जो है एक हाथ की कोई चीज़ बना करके और हम उसको मार्केट में उतार रहे हैं।
And as long as people need paper, Nimi is confident his business will thrive.
हैंडमेड पेपर की जो हाथ से बनाई हुई चीज़ है और इसकी लुकिंग जो है वो एक अलग पहचान है, इस वजह से इसको रखना चाहते हैं। इसकी डिमांड है मार्केट में।
This goat skin is about to be turned into parchment, an old kind of paper made from animal skin. It goes through a laborious process of having every last hair scraped off. The craft dates back to 2500 BC, and this is the last place in the US that still makes it. Every piece takes at least 2 weeks to make, and only a handful of people in the entire world know how.
Parchment as a product almost hasn't survived. There was almost no need for it as a material.
But it was this centuries-old work that helped Jesse Meyer save his family tannery. We visited their facility in Montgomery, New York, to see how it's still standing. Making parchment is a messy craft. It's cold and wet around the workshop, but the lingering smell is something Jesse's gotten used to. It all starts with the skin. Deer, goat, calf, and sheepskin are sent by slaughterhouses or local hunters. Jesse soaks it in a mixture of water and calcium hydroxide to break down the fibers, loosen the hair, and clean it. This is the longest part of the process, taking at least 2 weeks. Then it's time for dehairing. Jesse scrapes at the skin, pushing the hair off. He uses a makeshift tool, a 100-year-old piece of wood that has the perfect shape for the job.
Even the hand tools that we use, most people have never seen before. And in some cases, they don't exist, and I've had to, recreate these tools myself.
After dehairing, he removes the extra meat layers on the other side. They've installed machines to help speed this along, but sometimes Jesse prefers the traditional way.
The more involved you can be with your own hands, the better and more control you have over the end product. But there is a point where if you're doing this on a commercial scale to try to be efficient and more economical, you don't really have the ability to handle each one by hand.
The hides then go through a thorough rinse. That adjusts the pH level after weeks of intense chemical treatment. Jesse selects some of the clean skins to be dyed in a large drum. He uses plant-based pigments and water to create a range of colors. As the skins tumble, they soak up the dye until they're saturated. He hangs the skins to dry overnight so that the color spreads evenly throughout. But most of the rinsed skins are left their natural white color and sent up to the dry room. Jesse stretches the skin to keep it flat while it dries. First, he scrapes the hide while it's wet to remove excess moisture. Then when it's dry, he shaves it to clear away tissue. He made this medieval knife with a saw blade, a threaded rod, and leather. Its proper Latin name is linellum, for its crescent moon shape. Sanding is the very last step. Jesse refines the surface, smoothing it out until almost every blemish is undetectable. Finally, the skin is now parchment. The first record of parchment dates back to 2450 BC. Famous ancient documents like the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Magna Carta were all written on it for its durability. The use of parchment peaked in the Middle Ages in Europe, when it was mostly used for illuminated manuscripts and book bindings. Paper made from wood pulp or plant fibers was invented in China around 105 AD. It made its way across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe through the centuries with the rise of literacy and the printed word. It was faster and cheaper to make. It quickly industrialized and rendered parchment virtually irrelevant by the 16th century. Early in the 20th century, designers incorporated parchment into high-end furniture and decor, and it is still used for that today. Preserving history is what saved parchment in this business. Conservators use the material to mend old manuscripts, make copies, and restore missing pages.
It's been a very niche product. It is something that happens alongside of leather production, and that's how I kind of rediscovered and have been trying to sort of reapply it since then.
The rare craft saved his family's centuries-old tannery business, which has been in the country since his ancestors moved here in 1820. By the time Jesse took over, demand for leather was on the decline, and by 2005, keeping the business going was getting more difficult. That's when Jesse introduced parchment making. but he struggled to find out about the process.
There are a handful of other companies around the world that do this sort of thing, and they're far, far away, and they've never told me how they do what they're doing, so I've had to try to figure this out in a vacuum, so it's me figuring it out as I go and what seems to work best for me. Because it's such an old medieval craft, anytime I would try to go look up information, a lot of times it was from medieval recipes that were written in Latin from 1400.
Eventually, parchment became such an important part of the business, Jesse changed the name from Meyer & Sons to Pergamena, which means parchment in Latin. And he found a niche of customers, conservators and designers who use the material in lampshades, upholstery, headboards, and even as wallpaper.
No two pieces of parchment look the same, so, which is a blessing and a curse. It's part of the artistry.
A single sheet starts at $100.
What started out feeling like an albatross around my neck ended up becoming a way to help revitalize the family industry. I want to be proud of this and to be able to pass it on to my family, and for people to know that skilled work like this is still being done in the world. It's being made right here in the United States by a family that's been doing it for 450 years.
One sheet of traditional Vietnamese dây gió paper can last 800 years. But the craft of hand-making it is dying out. Only a few families in Bắc Ninh province continue to transform bark into paper. The process can take weeks, sometimes months. Phan Văn Tâm runs one of the last workshops in his village.
Cho đến giờ phút này thì anh cũng chưa nghĩ đến làm cái gì khác cả.
As far back as the 13th century, this paper was widely used for printing historical records and making folk art. But industrialized paper mills have brought this craft to the brink of extinction. So how is this centuries-old craft still standing? The two trees that make the dây gió paper can be found in the forests of northern Vietnam. Workers harvest the bark between August and October, when it peels easily because of the heat. Tâm is one of the last traditional dây gió paper makers in Dung O. He's been working in one of the last handicraft villages for 40 years. Today, he employs a small group of people. They soak the bark and cut it into 2-foot-long pieces and separate the good kind from the bad. Grinding is one of the few steps that is done by a machine.
Ngày xưa các cụ toàn giã bằng tay chứ không có máy nghiền như bây giờ.
But it still requires some physical effort. Tam pushes the bark with an oat stick to help it move through the grinder until it turns into a fine pulp. Sap from strips of wood from the maw tree will make the glue for the paper. Soaking it in water helps release it. Tâm was 20 years old when he started making dây gió paper. He learned the trade from his father and takes pride in keeping traditional techniques alive.
Tức là giấy thủ công của mình làm thì nó sẽ để được lâu năm hơn là giấy máy.
Even the tools they use are handmade. Nguyen Quang Wang is the last sieve maker in Dung O, who still makes the wooden frames that shape the paper from scratch.
Nếu chú làm thợ mộc thì là khoảng hơn 40 năm rồi. Còn như chú làm khuôn này thì là từ 30 năm trước.
His frames can last up to 3 years and are essential to getting the paper just right. If the dimensions are even slightly off, the paper could be ruined.
Thì khi xeo thì là cái lề này là những cái lề hay là những cái gió này là rất nhỏ, nó mới lọt ra cái chỗ đấy là cái tờ giấy nó rất bẩn.
Nguyen Thi Do begins forming the paper. She's been doing this job since she was 12, and her years of experience make her one of the best workers here.
Cái này chị làm cũng lâu ghê rồi, 33 năm.
She dunks the frame into the pulp mixture and sifts it until a perfect layer forms on top. It may look simple, but it's a skill that requires years of training.
Mà bỏ ra ngoài đây mà nó bị rót như thế này, ví dụ như thành vào tờ thì nó sẽ rúm thì cái tờ đấy mình lại phải bỏ đi.
She uses a bamboo screen to separate the paper. It is also made by hand. Do Zui Thai has been crafting these intricate folding screens for over 40 years. He's a 6th-generation bamboo maker and only sells to local artisans. Duo is so fast and precise, she can make 1,300 sheets in one day. She brings the stacks over to the press. It slowly squeezes the excess water from the paper. Tam has been using the press since he opened his workshop in 1982. He peels and sticks the sheets onto a wall one by one and coats them with an extra layer of moss sap.
Cái nhựa này có tác dụng tức là để nó tách từng tờ giấy một ra. Sau khi mình múc thành tờ giấy.
They stay on the wall for a week until they're completely dry. Paper making was the heart of the economy in Zungo for centuries. People used sisal paper to make books and dungo paintings, a popular folk art used to decorate homes during the Vietnamese New Year. But demand dwindled when paper factories opened in the area in the early 90s. By 2020, 75% of Vietnam's paper was factory made.
Thì sau đó cả làng luôn, hàng bao nhiêu trăm hộ để vẫn làm cái giấy này thì là bị mất nghề. Mất nghề đấy sau đó người ta mới đưa làm máy.
Today, Tam mostly sells the paper to museums and national archives. Although he's kept the craft alive in his community, he still worries that it may end with him. Younger people haven't shown interest in preserving it.
Con nhà tôi nó cũng tìm việc khác nó làm rồi. Mà nó cũng làm được cái việc khác rồi, cho nên là cái nghề giấy này nó bị vất vả quá. Thì đâm ra là chúng nó cũng không muốn theo.
But Chan Hang Yoon is trying to change that. She founded the ZA Project in 2013, a non-profit focused on preserving traditional papermaking in Vietnam.
When you touch the handmade paper, it's a very different feeling when you touch it, and when you use it, you know the material is come from nature.
The organization buys and uses Tam's sisal paper to produce postcards, jewelry, and artwork. The proceeds help support artisans who are working to keep sisal paper alive in their community. Yoon is also working to teach more young people and encourage them to use the paper.
We combine between the traditional value and also like contemporary and modern designs for young people. They are more interested in this craft.
In the last 9 years, the ZA Project has reached dozens of young artisans across Vietnam. It also restored a sense of pride in traditional paper makers.
Vừa vất vả mà vừa phải có tay nghề, vừa phải có sức khỏe, nó nhiều thứ lắm.
For this community of paper makers, this craft has become a labor of love.
Bởi vì tôi cũng yêu nghề, cho nên tôi mới làm được lâu năm như thế. Nếu như cái nghề này của anh mà bị mai một đi thì rất là tiếc lắm.
This paper is made from farm waste, some corn husks, stalks of sugarcane, but mostly poop. Elephant poop.
พอแห้งเสร็จปุ๊บก็จะเบาสะอาดกลิ่นมันชา smell like tea.
Hatsanai Chai Gawin, who goes by Pete, has been working at Pubu Paper Park for about 4 years.
สิ่งที่เยี่ยมที่สุดสำหรับงานที่เราทำตรงนี้เนี่ยที่สนุกที่สุดผมคิดว่าน่าจะเป็นการได้ใช้มุกตลกมากกว่าเนื่องจากว่าในสถานที่ของเราเนี่ยแน่นอนเป็นสถานที่ที่ทำงานเกี่ยวกับมูลสัตว์
Making paper without trees is their priority number 1, even if that means handling a lot of number 2.
Want to touch? จับไหม? No.
Can this model inspire people to take better care of endangered species? We visited Chiang Mai, Thailand, to see how paper gets made using a very particular kind of worldwide waste. This is Kan Loi. Trained caretakers called mahouts, like Bantong Shamnan Saad Si, can serve him up to 300 pounds of plants daily.
อาหารหลักของช้างเนี่ยจะเป็นหญ้ากล้วยอ้อยผลไม้หลายๆอย่างเนี่ยมันเป็นเพียงแค่อาหารเสริมเท่านั้น
Elephants can poop about 10 times a day.
เพราะฉะนั้นคุณค่าอาหารที่เขากินเข้าไปเนี่ย 60% ตกออกมาที่พื้น
So there's a lot of dung laying around Merim Elephant Home where he lives. And Pupu Paper Park co-founder Kanokratan Sukontoman is happy to take it away.
เราไปเก็บมูลช้างมาก่อน ฉะนั้นมูลช้างที่เราไปเก็บไม่ใช่ว่าสิ่งที่เราไปเก็บวันนี้เอามาทำวันนี้เลย อย่างเช่นเราไปเก็บมาไว้ก่อนเราเก็บสะสมไว้เยอะๆเลย
Tan pays nearby sanctuaries around $15 per bag and collects up to a ton of poop every week.
เอากำไรไปที่ plantation ไปที่เทือกสวนไร่นาไปซื้อหญ้าไปซื้ออ้อยไปซื้อกล้วยเอาไปให้ปางช้างก็จะเอามูลช้างส่วนหนึ่งมาให้เราเป็นวงจรหมุนงี้ไปเรื่อยๆ
Then it's Pete's job to turn it into paper.
It feels good. It's a poo caca.
But seriously, how do you clean up caca? Well, first, Pete soaks it overnight in water to remove sand, clay, and rocks.
คือตอนนี้นะครับเราก็จะเอาไอ้ตัวขี้ช้างที่เราแช่วันแรกไปใส่ของวันที่2เนาะแล้วก็เราจะตักของวันที่2เนี่ยไปล้างอีกทั้งหมด3ครั้งด้วยกันนะครับ
The company uses no chemicals or bleach. Trained poo meisters sanitize the dung in boiling water for 4 to 6 hours.
ที่มันกลายเป็นแบบเห็นเป็นหญ้าละมันก็ไม่ได้ยังขาวเนาะ
This kills bacteria and germs, but also softens the fibers. The longer it boils, the smoother the paper will turn out.
ถ้ามันร้อนถ้ามันอุ่นถ้ามันนิ่มเสร็จปุ๊บนั่นคือสามารถพร้อมทำเป็นกระดาษได้เลยนะครับไม่มีกลิ่นอะไรหรอกมีแค่กลิ่นหญ้ากลิ่นต้มหญ้าดีๆนี่เอง
Next, they drain the liquid and spread the cleaned, stringy dung to dry. That usually takes 1 to 2 weeks.
นี่คือกากใยที่พร้อมจะไปทำเป็นกระดาษละ
Pete mixes the poop with grass, hay, or tree bark in this blender. Coconut husks or banana stalks act as binders, depending on which crops are in season. The third ingredient?
กระดาษใช่แล้วกระดาษรีไซเคิลจะเป็นกระดาษA4 นิตยสารหนังสือพิมพ์อะไรก็ได้
Finally, they sometimes add non-toxic organic food dyes for color.
สีผสมอาหาร1ปลอดภัยเวลามีเด็กตัวเล็กๆเนี่ยอายุประมาณ 1-2 ขวบถ้าเห็นสีหลายสีปุ๊บเนี่ยเขาจะเริ่มชอบหยิบอะไรใส่ปาก
All this means no 2 batches of paper are exactly the same. It takes 2 hours of mixing the raw pulp to get the right consistency. Then workers shape the mixture into balls and squeeze out the excess liquid. The wastewater will be used again to make more pulp or to fertilize fruit trees on the property. Each ball weighs about half a kilogram.
กิโลก็จะได้1แผ่นใหญ่ตรงนี้เลยนะครับเราก็จะฉีกครึ่งก่อนเพื่อให้มันเท่ากันแล้วก็จะวางด้านซ้ายด้านขวา
They take special care to spread the pulp evenly.
ถ้าไหลออกเยอะกระดาษก็จะบาง ถ้ามันเกาะกันเป็นก้อนกระดาษก็จะหนาเราต้องพยายามละลายให้มันกระจายไปทั่วขึ้น
Tan and her husband Michael Flankman began developing this process in 2002. Then in 2009, during the economic recession, paper sales cratered. So the couple turned their process into an attraction open to the public.
เราจะทำต่อไปอย่างเดียวไม่ได้ละเริ่มเบื่อก็เลยมีความรู้สึกว่าจะทำอะไรต่อเราก็เลยมามองว่าสินค้าที่เราทำอยู่เริ่มมีคำถามเยอะว่าทำอย่างไร
Visitors can participate in paper making or buy products at the boutique. They built Pupu Paper Park in a province known for elephant tourism, but there are no elephants here.
เพราะว่าเรามองว่าครอบครัวสมัยใหม่เดี๋ยวนี้พาลูกไปเที่ยวในสิ่งที่เขาอยากให้ลูกได้เรียนรู้ไม่ใช่แค่ไปเที่ยวและถ่ายรูปอย่างเดียวเขาอยากให้ลูกได้รับความรู้กลับไปด้วย
It took 2 years to design and build the 1.5-acre property. They used traditional natural building materials, like palm fronds and trunks from fast-growing eucalyptus trees. Workers intentionally leave piles of dung along footpaths. In case visitors get lost, they're told to follow the turds. Tan is proud of every sheet of paper they make here.
เราต้องการให้มันมีความพิเศษ ฉะนั้นเราไม่ต้องการแทนที่กระดาษที่เราใช้อยู่ทุกวัน
The sheets take 4 to 12 hours to dry, depending on the weather.
โอเคดึงช้าๆนะครับ
If there's a defect in the paper, the team can put it back in the blender.
กระดาษ1แผ่นก็แน่นอนเป็นกระดาษทำมือจะไม่เพอร์เฟกต์ซะทีเดียวเอาลงไปรีไซเคิลอีกรอบหนึ่งได้เพราะฉะนั้นจะไม่มีอะไรต้องทิ้งไปเลย
Park employees use the paper to make greeting cards and all different kinds of origami art, like this decorative rose.
ถ้าเป็นหน้าหยาบๆแบบนี้เนี่ยส่วนใหญ่ก็จะเป็นใช้ในพวกงานอาร์ตงานอาร์ติสติกพวกงานศิลปะไม่ว่าจะเป็นห่อของขวัญปกหนังสือ
And at an off-site factory, local villagers fulfill thousands of orders for these smaller roses. Each handmade flower is carefully twisted and dyed. A bouquet sells at the park for about $22. The founders employ locals from Chiang Mai province, a region known for its intricate art and handicrafts. Making paper out of poop isn't as crazy as it sounds.
ฉะนั้นเราไม่ได้เริ่มต้นอะไรใหม่เลย เราบอกว่าเราเป็นคนที่ทำกระดาษมูลช้างเหมือนกันนะคะ
Researchers from China have experimented with paper made from panda poo. And in India, entrepreneurs are making stationery with rhino dung. In Thailand, turning poop into paper has the potential to support a dwindling species. Asian elephants have always played an important role in Thai culture. Kings would ride these massive animals into battle.
จากสงครามเรารู้ใจทีก็คือมาทำไม้สัมปทานป่าไม้ช้างลากซุงนะฮะจากช้างลากซุงมาเนี่ยเขาลากมาตั้งแต่อดีตจนมาถึงปี 2532
In 1989, the Thai government cracked down on deforestation.
พอปิดป่าปุ๊บช้างที่ลากไม้อยู่ในป่าเนี่ยเขาตกงานพอเขาตกงานเสร็จปั๊บเนี่ยถ้าลากไม้ก็ผิดกฎหมายเพราะฉะนั้นตกงานเราเป็นเจ้าของช้างเขาก็ปล่อย
Some mahouts and their elephants found work at tourist destinations. But then the pandemic hit and tourism slowed.
เราที่เลี้ยงช้างอยู่ในมือเนี่ยภายใน2 ปีโควิดเราต้องไปหาทุกสิ่งทุกอย่างมาให้เขากินให้ได้ถ้าไม่งั้นถ้าสวัสดิภาพสุขภาพเขาไม่ดีเนี่ยมันจะผลตอบรับกลับมาเราจะแก้ไขฟื้นฟูเขาค่อนข้างยากมาก
Now, after decades of poaching and habitat loss, there are only about 50,000 Asian elephants left in the world. More than half of the elephants in the country are held in captivity. Elephant tourism is one of the country's biggest, most profitable attractions. But training elephants can involve harsh practices, like chaining and beating the animals. Healthy elephants need space to roam away from crowds of people. And in most tourist spots, this just isn't possible. Authorities can often overlook regulations meant to protect the animals, according to some reports. So that makes Poo Poo Paper Park unique as an attraction that educates visitors about elephants without harming any animals.
ฉะนั้นเราก็มองว่าเราเปิดสถานที่ท่องเที่ยวที่หนึ่งที่เป็นทางเลือกให้ลูกค้าได้มาเที่ยวมากขึ้นแทนที่จะเรียนรู้ชีวิตอยู่กับช้างไปอาบน้ำช้างหรือว่าเข้าใจของช้างเนี่ยเราก็มองว่านอกจากช้างที่เขาไปเที่ยวแล้วไปจับตัวเป็นๆได้เนี่ยเหมือนอารมณ์ว่าพิพิธภัณฑ์นอกห้องแต่เป็นพื้นที่เปิดลูกค้ามาที่นี่เขาอาจจะได้เรียนรู้หลายอย่างว่าการทำกระดาษจากมูลช้างด้วยแต่เราต้องการให้เขากลับไปแล้วเขาได้เรียนรู้ด้วยว่าการรักษาสิ่งแวดล้อมเนี่ยมันทำได้เริ่มต้นได้ตั้งแต่วันนี้เลย
They sell their products in over 500 specialty shops across the world, including national parks, zoos, and museums like the Smithsonian. The company also collects cow, horse, donkey, and buffalo waste from nearby farms. Those animals digest plants better than elephants, so the poop is less fibrous. That means any pulp made without elephant waste needs more scrap paper to achieve the right consistency. The whole system benefits the park, its visitors, and most importantly, hungry elephants.
ต้องใช้ใจ ไม่ใช่เห็นว่ามันทำได้แล้วมันจะทำได้ เอาไปทำอะไรต่อใช้อะไรได้อีกไหมอะไรอย่างเงี้ยแล้วคือมันเหมือนแบบเราก็พยายามให้เขาเห็นว่ามันใช้ได้จริงแล้วมันสนุกนะ